It is April 24th, 1923, 11 days after the previous speech in this series. Hitler has been on stage almost continuously through this spring, and the speeches are beginning to show a pattern. Each one targets a slightly different audience, tests a slightly different angle of attack, refines the message for a different room. This speech is aimed at the working class. Where the April 13th address was a grand theory of world history, this one is more intimate and more tactically focused. Hitler is trying to peel German workers away from socialism and toward his movement, and to do that, he needs to speak their language while systematically redirecting their loyalties. The technique on display here is more sophisticated than simple hatred. It is recruitment. The slow, careful work of making people feel that the enemy they already have is the wrong enemy, and that the real one has been hidden from them all along.
I reject the word proletariat. The Jew who coined the word meant by proletariat not the oppressed, but those who work with their hands, and those who work with their intellects are stigmatized bluntly as bourgeois. It is not the character of a man's life which forms the basis of this classification. It is simply the occupation, whether a man works with his brain or with his body. And in this turbulent mass of the hand workers, the Jew recognized a new power, which might perhaps be his instrument for the gaining of that which is his ultimate goal: world supremacy, the destruction of the national states. And while the Jew organizes these masses, he organizes business too at the same time. Business was depersonalized, i.e., Judaized. Business lost the Aryan character of work. It became an object of speculation. Master and man were torn asunder, and he who created this class division was the same person who led the masses in their opposition to this class division, led them not against his Jewish brethren, but against the last remnants of independent national economic life.
The opening move is the rejection of a word, and it is worth understanding exactly what work that rejection does. Proletariat is a Marxist term for the working class, and by attributing it to the Jew who coined the word, Hitler is doing three things simultaneously. He is poisoning the concept, he is discrediting the political tradition that uses it, and he is offering his working class audience a flattery. You are not a proletarian, a word that reduces you to your hands. You are a German worker defined by your character and your nation. The claim that the word proletariat was coined by a Jew is false. The term was used by Roman census takers to describe the lowest property class and was introduced into modern political discourse by Karl Marx, who was of Jewish origin, but who was also the target of virulent anti-Semitism from other Jewish thinkers and who had himself written anti-Semitic texts. The attribution here is not historical, it is rhetorical. The goal is to make every Marxist concept feel like a foreign intrusion designed to divide Germans against each other, which is precisely what Hitler is doing in this speech to every concept except his own.
And these remnants, the bourgeoisie, which also was already Judaized, resisted the great masses who were knocking at the door and demanding better conditions of life. And so the Jewish leaders succeeded in hammering into the minds of the masses the Marxist propaganda. Your deadly foe is the bourgeoisie. If he were not there, you would be free. If it had not been for the boundless blindness and stupidity of our bourgeoisie, the Jew would never have become the leader of the German working classes. And the ally of this stupidity was the pride of the better stratum of society, which thought it would degrade itself if it condescended to stoop to the level of the plebe. The millions of our German fellow countrymen would never have been alienated from their people if the leading strata of society had shown any care for their welfare.
This passage is rhetorically precise in a way that deserves careful attention. Hitler is not defending the bourgeoisie, he is blaming it. He is telling working-class listeners, your anger at the upper classes is legitimate. The German bourgeoisie really was blind, really was arrogant, really did fail you. This acknowledgement of genuine grievance is the hook. But notice where it leads, not to class consciousness or economic reform, but to the conclusion that the bourgeoisie's failure was its own Judaization, its corruption by Jewish influence. The class conflict is real. The cause is invented. This is the central mechanism of the entire speech. Validate the suffering, redirect the blame. A working-class listener who feels that his anger at wealthy elites is being taken seriously and who is then told that those elites are themselves victims of the same hidden enemy has been moved from class politics to racial politics without ever being asked to abandon his grievances. He has simply been given a new explanation for them.
You must say farewell to the hope that you can expect any action from the parties of the right on behalf of the freedom of the German people. The most elementary factor is lacking: the will, the courage, the energy. Where then can any strength still be found within the German people? It is to be found, as always, in the great masses. Their energy is slumbering, and it only awaits the man who will summon it from its present slumber and will hurl it into the great battle for the destiny of the German race. The battle which alone can liberate Germany will be fought out with the forces which well up from the great masses. Without the help of the German working man, you will never regain a German Reich. Not in our political salons lies the strength of the nation, but in the hand, in the brain, and in the will of the great masses. Now, as ever, liberation does not come down from above. It will spring up from below. If we today make the highest demands upon everyone, that is only in order that we may give back to him and to his child the highest gift, freedom and the respect of the rest of the world.
There is a man who will summon it from its slumber. Hitler does not say I. He says the man, describing a messianic figure in the third person while standing on a stage in front of a crowd. This indirect self-presentation is a calculated technique. It presents the leader not as a politician seeking votes, but as a historical inevitability, a force called into being by the needs of the nation rather than by personal ambition. The language of the masses rising from below is also a direct borrowing from socialist rhetoric. Liberation does not come from above, it will spring up from below, is a near paraphrase of standard labor movement oratory. Hitler is speaking to people who have heard this language all their lives, and he is using it to recruit them away from the movement that created it. The words are familiar. The destination is entirely different. By the end of this paragraph, the working-class energy Hitler is invoking will be directed not toward economic justice, but toward racial war, the great battle for the destiny of the German race.
The parties of the right have lost all energy. They see the flood coming, but their one longing is just for once in their lives to form a government. Unspeakably incapable, utterly lacking in energy, cowards all. Such are all these bourgeois parties, and that at the moment when the nation needs heroes, not chatterers. In the left, there is somewhat more energy, but it is used for the ruin of Germany. The communists on principle reject the discipline imposed by the state. In its stead, they preach party discipline. They reject the administration of the state as a bureaucracy, while they fall on their knees before the bureaucracy of their own movement. There is arising a state within the state which stands in deadly enmity against the state which we know, the state of the community of the people. This new state ultimately produces men who reject with fanaticism their own people, so that in the end foreign powers find in them their allies. Such is the result of Marxist teaching.
Having dismissed the right as cowards, Hitler now turns to the left, and the critique he makes is, again, structurally interesting. He does not simply call communists traitors. He makes a substantive argument that Communist Party discipline is itself a form of bureaucratic authoritarianism, that it creates a state within a state, the exact phrase he uses to describe Jewish power in other speeches, and that it ultimately serves foreign powers rather than Germany. This mirroring is not accidental. By describing communism with the same vocabulary he uses for Jewish conspiracy, he is encoding a connection for his audience without stating it explicitly. The listener who has heard Hitler describe Jews as a state within a state will hear those words again here and make the link himself. Both parties are therefore eliminated, the right through incompetence, the left through treason. In the space cleared by this double dismissal, only one option remains, which is, of course, the point.
What we want is not a state of drones, but a state which gives to everyone that to which on the basis of his own activity he has a right. He who refuses to do honest work shall not be a citizen of the state. The state is not a plantation where the interests of foreign capital are supreme. Capital is not the master of the state, but its servant. Therefore, the state must not be brought into dependence on international loan capital. And if anyone believes that that cannot be avoided, then do not let him be surprised that no one is ready to give his life for this state. Further, that greatest injustice must be corrected, which today still weighs heavily upon our people and upon almost all peoples. If in a state only he who does honest work is a citizen, then everyone has the right to demand that in his old age he shall be kept free from care and want. That would mean the realization of the greatest social achievement.
The closing passage is the most carefully constructed in the speech and the most revealing about what Nazism actually was as a political program. Capital is not the master of the state, but its servant. He who does honest work has the right to security in old age. The state is not a plantation for foreign capital. These sound, and were designed to sound, like the program of a left-wing party. They are the reason the word socialist appears in National Socialist. But read each sentence carefully and a consistent qualifier appears. Honest work, his own activity, foreign capital. The implicit contrast in every case is between German workers, who do honest labor, and Jews, who are coded as the owners of speculative, parasitic, foreign capital. The social program is real in its emotional appeal and hollow in its substance. There will be no redistribution of wealth, no labor protections, no old age security guaranteed by law. What there will be is the removal of the people Hitler has defined as the obstacle to all of that, after which, presumably, everything good will follow automatically. It is a politics of elimination dressed in the language of social democracy. Adolf Hitler delivered this speech on April 24, 1923, to an audience he was actively trying to recruit from the German labor movement. What makes it worth studying alongside the others in this series is the contrast it offers. Where the grand theoretical speeches are built on open hatred and apocalyptic conspiracy, this one works through flattery, borrowed language, and the patient redirection of legitimate grievances. The working class anger Hitler is addressing here was real. The economic humiliation of Weimar Germany was real. The failure of the bourgeois parties to address workers' needs was real. None of that required a conspiracy theory to explain. But a conspiracy theory was what was on offer, and it came wrapped in the language of solidarity, dignity, and social justice that workers had been hearing from the left for decades. The lesson here is not about hatred. It is about how hatred hides. The most effective propaganda does not always announce itself with slurs and slogans. Sometimes it arrives speaking your language, validating your pain, and offering you very quietly an enemy who is not the one you started with.